This is the Observations Podcast for Sunday, the 8th of June, 2023. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dale Franks. Michael Wade will be back with us momentarily. He had to step out real quick, but he is coming back. He is here tonight, and we'll be able to talk to him in just a few minutes. I have his Zoom window open so that I can see whenever he makes it back to his desk. In any event, welcome back to the podcast. We have a couple of things that we want to talk about this week. Obviously, the first thing that we want to talk about is the Donald Trump indictment, because that came down this week, and we'll talk about that and what it means, and also some of the blowback from that indictment as well. For me, this is one of those times when I wish for two things. Number one, I wish I was a lawyer so that I would understand what this whole indictment is about, especially in the sense that this indictment also, at least tangentially, impacts with the Presidential Records Act, potentially. At least that's what some have been saying. And now that we have Michael here. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hey.
So, the Trump indictment. If this was not Donald Trump president and the Presidential Records Act didn't exist and the various executive orders associated with it didn't exist, if this was just some, regular government worker, cabinet secretary, actually anybody below the rank of vice president, this would be a slam dunk, I would think, wouldn't it?
To a certain extent. I mean, one thing to understand is that the NARA, the National Archives, the statutes that control the records collection and keeping and whatever else, it's not a criminal statute. What Trump is being charged under is actually the Espionage Act, which I believe it was Woodrow Wilson signed into being.
Yes, the Espionage Act of 1917.
Yeah, and used it much like Biden is using it now. There really shouldn't be any crossover. This is such an odd case, especially. And I'm not saying he's innocent. I think that there's a colorable case against him on very narrow issues. I don't think that precedent supports the bringing of this case in the first place. And to be honest, I mean, without getting into the nitty-gritty, I don't think any of this matters as far as legal technical issues. This is pure politics, and it's done to not only solidify Trump's support and to divide the Republican Party and to boost the Democratic Party for the 2024 election. I mean, there's literally nothing else to this. It's a complete scam, especially when you consider that Hillary Clinton did way worse. It's not even close. Joe Biden.
I would point out a couple of things. Since you've brought it up, and for some reason I'm getting a lot of echo, and I'm not entirely sure why.
Actually, that might be because this is getting. I got my microphone too close to you.
Oh, okay. But I think the echo I'm getting is actually coming from my microphone. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, then screw you.
Yeah, screw me. Classified documents from Hillary Clinton's classified email server were found on the laptop of her aide, Huma Abedin's husband, Anthony Weiner. Not sure how that got there, but that's clearly
marked insurance.
Yeah, yeah, but someone who was not supposed to have that classified information at all, it clearly somehow got from Hillary Clinton, was released into the wild to Huma Abedin, who somehow it ended up on Anthony Weiner's laptop. So we know that that information actually escaped into the wild from this email server. And James Comey came out with all of this, it was very negligent. It was very bad, but we're not going to charge anybody. Okay, at the same time, we had charged, what's her name, Reality Winner, and a couple of other people under the Espionage Act, putting them in prison for a single classified document that they did not handle well. And one of the things that Comey said was, well, that was...
Well, I mean, Reality Winner actually disclosed.
Yeah, she actually intentionally... She actually, yeah, okay, but I wasn't talking about her particularly. I was talking about the other person who actually turned trans.
Yeah, there was that sub...
Yeah, and then there was the submarine guy that just took a picture inside the reactor room.
Which he wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah,
and he shouldn't have done.
Not supposed to do. He got caught, and, he goes to jail. Then you have Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden, they found classified records that went all the way back to his time as a senator. Now, let's be very clear. If you're a senator or a member of the House of Representatives, the only way that you see classified documents is if you go into a secure classified information facility called a SCIF. And those documents are supposed to be kept under lock and key in that SCIF. You can come in, sit down in the SCIF, view the documents, get up and walk out. So let's be very clear that the only way that I can see Joe Biden having those classified documents is by stealing them from a SCIF.
Absolutely, because you don't get an electronic copy.
No.
You can't email it to yourself.
No.
It's a physical copy.
It's a paper copy that is maintained inside a safe in the SCIF. And so how did that get out of there? And theoretically, by the way, somebody is supposed to be overseeing you while you're looking at these documents to ensure that you don't take them. Yet somehow documents from his Senate days ended up at, where was it, UPenn? They found it at his UPenn off his UPenn. It's not an office.
Some of them, and then others were found at his office in Chinatown,
his garage in Delaware,
right? Yeah,
in his home. So okay. Now, granted, there is still a special counsel who is investigating that. I mean, theoretically, some sort of charges.
Oh yeah,
some sort of charges
totally
should arise. Yeah, and by the way, one of the things that Comey had said during the Clinton thing was, well, she was very careless and she probably shouldn't have done all this. But look, she didn't have any intent to do anything bad. So,
nobody would charge her. Nobody in their right mind would bring charges against her.
Which, by the way,
clearly didn't have.
By the way, you're a cop. That's not your job. That's not your assessment to make. Your job is to gather the evidence. You're a reporting agency.
And there's no intent requirement in that statute.
Oh no, the Espionage Act doesn't care what your intent is. It's, did you do X? Well, then you're guilty. We don't care why you did it. You just did it.
Strict liability.
So technically, Hillary Clinton should have gone to jail. Joe Biden, technically, we found the classified documents in an unsecured location, his freaking garage. He should go to jail. I mean, it's that simple. We know, of course, that Hillary won't go to jail. We know that Joe Biden won't go to jail. In fact, whenever you and I were talking back in 2015 and 2016, we both just said flat out, Hillary Clinton will never spend a day in jail for this. She should, and she never will, because there is a two-tier justice system in this country. And clearly, that is true. If you are part of a particular class, you basically have a get-out-of-jail-free card. Indeed, Hillary Clinton, right after Donald Trump was indicted, came out with a post on Twitter showing her wearing a "but her emails" hat with this cute smirk on her face. In other words, yeah, I did it and I got away with it, and Trump didn't. Ha, ha, ha. I mean, literally, she's boasting that she was not indicted for what is an indictable offense. I mean, it's just black letter in the Espionage Act that it's an indictable offense. She walked away from it. My problem is not that Trump I don't care at this point whether Trump mishandled classified information. I mean, I do, because it's pretty dangerous to have that stuff out there. It could compromise the national security of the United States. It's a bad thing. But that's not the primary issue. And by the way, if Trump is guilty of some horrible Espionage Act offense, maybe he should go to jail. I don't have a problem with it. But I know a lot of other. I have a lot of other people who I know should go to jail and who don't. Look at James Comey's FBI. All of the people who lied to a FISA court to get search warrants on a fraudulent basis. How many of them went to jail? Andrew McCabe, who lied to the FBI during the IG investigation. What was his penalty? He got to retire 2 weeks early and keep his retirement.
And then got his money. Yeah, that's right, because he was fired. And so he was going to lose his pension. Sued, said nope, he gets his pension. So he basically, like you said, he retired 2 weeks early.
Yeah, he gets to walk off of this. There's a lot of people who are supposed to be prosecuted who aren't being prosecuted, but Donald Trump, he doesn't get a pass. He's not a member of that class. And I don't hold a brief for Donald Trump, as I'm sure you are well aware, and probably anybody who's ever watched this podcast is well aware. Donald Trump is a narcissistic buffoon. He never should have been president, and he should never be president again. However, we have a problem. We have a two-tiered justice system in this country, and that is an extraordinarily dangerous thing. I have no fear of what may or may not happen to Donald Trump or what the ultimate result of this prosecution may be, but I do have fears about other things. I want to share something with you. So let's go to screen share. By the way, I have his indictment here. I have a couple of questions about the indictment, by the way. I just want to, before I move on to the thing that concerns me, I just want to show a couple of things here. They have pictures in this indictment of all of these boxes which supposedly contained classified information. So here is a whole bunch of boxes that are on the ballroom at stage at Mar-a-Lago. Okay, I want you to pay particular notice to these boxes. There's a bunch of white boxes. There are several boxes that are obviously document boxes that are manila colored. And then you have all these white boxes. So then we come down to the next picture. Okay, we have one of the manila boxes, but all the rest of these are white boxes. Are these the same boxes? Then we have this picture of the storage room. Where are the manila boxes? Bunch of white boxes. Where are the manila ones? Here are some manila colored boxes, the regular brown cardboard boxes, but these aren't document boxes. This seems like a different set of boxes than the boxes that were in the previous picture. So I'm kind of curious. And here's a box that's wide open, and what we can see here appears to be a bunch of a newspaper. Yeah, it spilled. You know, it was just casually placed there. Maybe. I don't know. Again,
seems to be a guitar.
Yeah, seems to be a guitar behind boxes. This is not the thing that bothers me so much.
What is that? That looks like a guitar case.
No, it's a guitar case. It's clearly a guitar case of some kind. Well, it could be a bass. We don't know. But these don't appear to be classified documents, and none of them appear to have classified cover sheets. I mean, it's the front page of the Washington Post, apparently, and other things.
Right.
So I'm not sure what this picture tells us, except to say that there were some boxes at various places, different boxes at various places, and we're told that some of these contained, 100 or so or more classified documents. Okay, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. These appear to be different boxes in different pictures.
Except that we know the history, and we know that the back and forth with the National Archives, the FBI, and the Trump lawyers was like, okay, come and take a look. They came and took a look. We said, hey, you need to secure these better. And let's also keep in mind that Mar-a-Lago was where Trump was operating from as president. It was already a secure facility.
Well,
it was a SCIF.
I should say there should be a SCIF at Mar-a-Lago, but this does not appear to be storage inside a SCIF. Yet, with the documents I see, these don't appear to be classified documents either. I don't see.
There's also
classified cover sheet.
Secret. There's also what do you call it? Secret Service, who are stationed there all the time.
Yeah, but that's separate. The Secret Service care about the physical security of the president and his family. They don't care about
I
classified
understand that,
documents. They just
but
don't do that.
they're still there. Like, these documents weren't in danger of like falling into the wrong hands because of carelessness. And like you said, I mean, yeah, they show us boxes, but I'm not seeing the allegations that those specific boxes had
Classified
classified
in them.
information in it.
I mean, we're showing the pictures, and we're led to believe that these boxes had classified
It
information.
seems a lot of implication is involved.
But there's a lot of implication. I think the thing that really gets here is in terms of the and there's a specific quote that they have here, which apparently
I could have
yeah, apparently they have it on tape.
declassified it.
Let me just look. Hey, how about? Oh,
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
You got it.
Okay. As president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't. But, this is still a secret. Trump told the individuals the plan was highly okay, so that's certainly an admission against interest in this particular case. But
recording come from?
Apparently, this is what we're told. And again, we can believe as much or as little as what's in this indictment as possible, because it is, in fact, the indictment. This is the prosecution's argument. And they are not putting in, any exculpatory evidence that may exist anywhere in here. So like all indictments, it's a very one-sided presentation. But apparently the story is that there are a whole bunch of Trump people who started recording conversations with the president, because after he would have a conversation with them, days or hours later, he would have a different memory of the conversation than they had. And so they were starting to record conversations with the president to play back to him to say, no, that's not what you told me. This is what you told me. And I have it on tape. That doesn't.
I don't know. That's plausible.
That doesn't surprise. But in any event, we have this, and how the Presidential Records Act impacts any of this, because presidents are allowed to keep even classified information as part of their records. Bill Clinton had a sock drawer full of tapes that were ultimately classified because there were conversations with foreign leaders on them.
Obama. So did Bush.
Yes. So So there's a difference, apparently, in the Presidential Records Act, and I have looked it over, and as much as a non-lawyer can, I've looked at it, and from what I can tell, what presidents are supposed to do is keep their personal records, classified or not, separate from government work product, like government classified documents. So there is, a record, like a memo the president might write to himself based on a classified document. That memo would become a personal record of the president, and of course it would be classified because of the information in it at the same level of the original document where it existed. But the original document is the property of the United States government. And indeed, the National Archives are supposed to be the sole storage place for all of these documents. The president has control over them, but legally they are stored with the National Archives. But this gets into all kinds of stuff that I'm not qualified to talk about, and would, even if we found someone who was, would require so much tendentious legal analysis as to be boring as shit. So we're just going to have to go with the fact that this indictment exists, that there are 30 counts 1 through 31 are here. And then we've got a couple of counts at the very end, starting at count 32, I believe. Well, again, how about count 32? Well, co-8unt 32. How about count 32? There we go. So here's count 32, conspiracy to obstruct justice. And they brought in Walt Nauta.
Yeah, see, these are the more dangerous counts. Every single one of the other ones are essentially process crimes, right? These are a little bit more dangerous. They can have teeth, but there's a lot to prove here.
Yeah, first of all, prove that Walt Nauta knew anything about classified anything. The
Right.
president said, hey, move these boxes. And Walt Nauta, who's the president's valet, said, okay, I'll get those boxes moved. And now they have him as an indicted co-conspirator on a conspiracy charge for conspiracy.
And why do you think that is?
Because if you don't have a conspirator, you don't have a conspiracy.
And in order to create the biggest possible division, hey, let's grab the valet.
Yeah.
He'll turn over.
I got to have a conspirator, and this is the guy who physically moved the documents, so he must have been the conspirator. We generally don't drag employees into this stuff who are just, being told to move things, but fine. Now that we have Walt Nauta, we have two people, thus we have a conspiracy to hide these documents. You're going to have to prove to me that Walt Nauta knew what was in these documents and why he was moving them, but okay, fine. Withholding a document or a record, okay, again, that's a process crime, but they're bringing in Trump and Nauta in both of them. There are some things about this indictment, and it's 38 counts, right? Or 37 counts.
Something like that.
Nope, they're 38 counts. False statements and representation. Of course, here they're grabbing Nauta because there's a couple of times Nauta.
18 USC 1001. This is the motherlode of all FBI indictments because, you lied to us and we can now prosecute you.
Yeah, and I think
it's like it has to be in there no matter what.
So the question, are you aware of any boxes being brought to his home? No. Liar! Liar! You are aware of boxes. So, okay, there. And then he said, I don't know. I just don't know. Okay, well, that's a lie. You clearly know, and we can prove that you know.
Right.
So those statements are false. So that's a federal felony by just answering that. By the way, if the FBI ever talks to you, ever, for any reason, if the local police come and talk to you for any reason, if the sheriff's department shows up, if you live in Texas, if the constables show up, whatever it may be, anybody who wears or carries a badge who says, I would like to talk to you, the proper answer is, well, no. I will make no statement, oral or written.
Do you have a warrant?
For any reason. Well,
do you have a subpoena?
Yeah, then I'm not.
Otherwise, no.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything. You can't make me say anything. I'm not going to say
That's
anything.
right. Even if you have a warrant or subpoena, I don't have to say anything.
And don't fall for the old, hey, you're not.
Well, this will be just so much easier.
Don't fall for it. You're not a target of the investigation.
Right.
Because whether that's true or not, and hey, it may very well be true.
They don't have to tell you the truth.
At the moment that he says that.
That's what makes that whole 18 USC 1001 so pernicious.
Yeah, we can lie.
You can't like mislead them, but they are perfectly allowed to mislead you.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah, that's like the dumb thing where people says, "Are you a cop?" Because if you're a cop, you have to tell me. No,
you have to tell me.
No, they don't. Cops can lie to you all day long, and nobody gets in trouble for
Although that is a pretty cool way to like separate the wheat from the chaff, as it were.
Yeah. Once you say, "Are you a cop?" You have to tell me if you're a cop. Okay. Well, you're going to jail because you're dumb. But even if they tell you you're not a target of the investigation, you're just a witness. Doesn't matter. Have nothing to say to you. Have nothing to add.
That's absolutely right. Until you talk to an attorney, and until that attorney talks to their attorneys, you have nothing to say. There's literally nothing that will come, nothing good that will come of it.
No, there is nothing you should say to any police officer except through your attorney. And that is the only way in which you should ever make a statement of any kind or answer any kind of questions. So, if you don't answer the FBI's questions, they can't get you on 18 USC section 1001A2. Because if you say anything, even if you say, I don't know, or I don't remember, they can charge you simply because they think you do remember.
Right. And even though that may be nigh on impossible for them to prove, now you're subject to the process. and that's the penalty.
And the process
The
itself is the
process
punishment.
is, yeah,
Because it's going to cost you
absolutely.
$100,000 just to get you out of trouble for saying, I don't know. So never talk
I
to
mean,
the
look what
cops.
they did to Michael Flynn and that other guy uh, who was like barely even involved in the Trump administration, and they bankrupted him. They
Yeah.
bankrupted both of them.
Yeah. You lose your house, you lose everything. So never talk to the cops. So anyway, interesting to talk about the indictment and to look it over and to see what they're looking at. Again, this is all a one-sided prosecutorial presentation. It doesn't look good that the day after you're indicted, your legal team quits.
Yeah, what's up with that? That was weird. I think
Well,
they got scared.
um, here's why they
They
may.
literally, so one of the things is that they have gone after Trump's attorneys.
Yeah, Trump attorney 1, unnamed, and Trump attorney
Right.
2 informed him, and now we have Trump as apparently Trump attorney 1 recording him, suggesting, saying that we don't have any of those documents, they're not there. So, client privilege, except in the commission of a crime. These
Exactly. They use the crime fraud exception
Yeah, to go after
to
his
break
attorneys.
the attorney client privilege. Now, remember, these are also the same people that drove uh, earlier Trump attorneys out of business,
Oh yeah,
completely out of business.
yeah. So
Being
those,
associated with Trump as an attorney has been very bad for business.
yeah. Well, it's been
And
very
that's
unfortunate for his
fucked
attorney.
up. I mean, that's just absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
works. This is like Stasi level. I mean, it makes me really, really mad because I just you do your best to represent your client,
and look,
and
your
you've got to keep their secrets.
and by the way, your client is going to ask you some effed up questions, right?
Of course, they are.
Like right here. Okay, what happens if we basically what happens if we tell them to go screw?
Right.
Okay, well, as an attorney, you tell them what happens if you say go screw.
Exactly.
But it's not a crime to look.
No.
I don't want anybody looking through my boxes.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't want you looking through my boxes. Yeah, you probably don't. Yeah, I'm sure you don't. Not a crime. Okay, what happens if we don't just respond at all or don't play ball with them? Okay, that's a
Right.
question.
And literally, these are
Not a
questions
crime.
I have gotten many times over. Is like, well, what if we do this? Okay, well, bad news. That's not going to turn out well.
You know,
But it's a legitimate question to ask. I mean, hey, what are my options here?
what happens if I
And
just delete all of the tapes with Haldeman and Ehrlichman?
I mean, it, so apparently Trump is alone in this world that he is not allowed to have counsel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
and
It goes against everything that is in the Constitution.
here's where it's starting to get dangerous. Now, this is Vice News, so we can take their, Trump's far right supporters. We can throw away a lot of this language here, but the fact is, there are a lot of people who, and look, I'm sure that for some of it, there is an element of I love Trump so much because God knows there's a cult of personality around Trump.
Well, and he's playing to it.
And yeah,
That
of course,
whole Magalorians. What did he call them? Magadonians.
Magadonians. Yeah. But
I mean, talk about playing to a cult of personality.
But, when you have a system of justice that doesn't mete out justice, that looks like it is clearly biased, and where it looks like there are two tiers of justice, where some people just get away with anything that they want to do, and some people, well, the bad people, they get caught. So, show up at the Capitol on January 6th and you may be in solitary confinement in a federal prison for 2 years in pretrial detention. Because, you might escape from your farm in Nebraska and go to Canada. I don't know. You have classified information on a unauthorized server in your basement because you don't want to deal with the government's email system. Oh, hey,
Come on. She didn't mean it.
Get out of jail free card. So, fact, our forefathers would have hung them for treason. And the thing is that
they're not even trying to hide it anymore. That's the issue. This is so incredibly over the top. And look, it's piled on top of the very fundamental problem that we have two countries that cannot exist together anymore. What the left wants is directly opposed to what the right wants. And yes, there are a lot of people in the middle, but it's the power centers have just gotten so far apart. It's becoming impossible. And like I said to you, I don't know if it was today or last night, but this next election may be the last election we have for these United States as we are currently configured, because it doesn't matter who wins. It does not matter who loses. The losers are not going to accept that the winner was legitimately elected. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't matter which side wins. It is not going to happen. We are headed towards serious fissure.
It hasn't really happened since 2000. I mean, when you
that's right. I mean, the Democrats have not accepted the last Republican that they accepted was legitimately elected was in 1988.
That's correct. George W. Bush's election and re-election were considered illegitimate. In 2000, it was, the Supreme Court stole the election for him in 2004. It was Diebold stole the election because John Kerry was so popular, I guess. And then there was 2008 where, look, nobody believes that Barack Obama lost that election. Everybody knew he was going to win that election before it. And 2012, very much the same sort of thing. But 2000 but there wasn't a lot of Barack Obama stole the 2012 election. But there was a lot on the Democratic side of Donald Trump stealing the election in 2015. Indeed, it was Donald Trump stole the election in 2016, and the Russians helped him do it.
Right. We had 2.5 years. We had a special investigator or counsel. We had resignation, well, not resignations. Comey was fired. We had tell-all books. We had everything. Oh yeah, it was a big hoax.
Yeah, and then in 2020, Joe Biden didn't win that election, so now it's back on the Republicans. Look, it doesn't matter who wins. No one's going to accept it. And once we start hearing rhetoric like this, the one that I have highlighted on the screen, if you want to get to President Trump, you're going to have to go through me, and you're going to have to go through 75 million Americans just like me. And I'm going to tell you, most of us are card-carrying members of the NRA. We are that far from asking for a civil war.
Yeah. Well, and let's face it. I mean, the left has been pushing for this for quite a while. And are there locos on the right? Well, of course there are. There's locos on every faction, right? But I think the biggest spark prior to the 2024 election is going to be this thing down in Atlanta. Did we talk about this last week? I can't remember.
No, we haven't. In fact, we haven't even talked about that. This is just one indictment. There is another one coming.
Yeah.
And
And
this
so
time it's going to be in
there's
Georgia.
the right. Well, that's a whole. So you got the Alvin Bragg thing up in New York, bullshit. This one interfering with that's stupid. But the thing in Atlanta, I'm more concerned about is this what the left calls Cop City, training facility for Atlanta area police. Um, and actually, it might even be for state police too. I don't really know.
It's a
But
law enforcement. It's a law enforcement
academy,
training.
yeah, right. And so I thought that we wanted them to be better trained. I know I want them to be better trained. It seems like this would be a good thing, but the left is all up in arms about this, and they're threatening. They've already opened up fire. One of their guys got killed after shooting at cops, and they've turned that into a martyrdom situation, or at least they've tried to. They're threatening to burn this thing down.
Yeah, they're just saying if you build it, we will burn it. And on the front page of What is Cop City on the Stop Cop City website, to be clear, Cop City is not just a controversial training center. It's a war base where police will learn military-like maneuvers to kill black people and control our bodies and movement. Okay. So the facility
it's like
and then
it's so absurd.
They are practicing to make sure poor and working class people stay in line. So
Yeah, because cops are definitely up there in the upper echelons of the economy. They make so much damn money. None of them have to work a second job.
So, this is I think this is going to go beyond civil disobedience.
Well, and
clearly,
that's
and it already has. It already has. There's already been one shootout over this.
That's right. And they've been using that guy. What was he called? Torgu Tigra, something like Little Turtle, like some sort of Spanish name for Little Turtle or something. And they are not, the left in general has never been conciliatory. Ever. It's not in their nature. They are after power because they can't stand if people don't do it their way. The right is, generally speaking, and I'm being very general when I'm talking about these two sides. The right, generally speaking, is, I don't really care what you do. Just stay out of my shit. That's all I care about. And that works for long periods of times until somebody. Now, look, the right also did this where they pushed back when you had the religious right pushing back in like the 50s and 60s. They haven't always been innocent or anything.
The thing is,
but it's always that, like, it's when you have to get involved in somebody else's life because you don't think they're living it right.
Yeah, and you have to be constantly, publicly, not just accepted. I remember when the whole idea was about acceptance. You have or tolerated. Tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to be accepted. You have to be celebrated. And if you don't, then you're a problem. Again, we can look at the White House just yesterday, where the U.S. flag is flanking the gay pride flag because obviously that's the most important
thing in the world.
That's the most important flag. It's there's no God associated with this, obviously. But
well, there's no real God. There is certainly a
there
God
is, but there is actually a God associated with this, and that God is called the state.
Right. That's exactly right.
And, you will bake the cake. You'll live in the pod. You'll eat the bugs because we say you have to.
You will say the pronouns. You will genuflect to the BLM. You will do everything that we say you need to do because you're bad, we're good.
And by the way, you see this in arguments that are being held among leftists, right? People who are, the sort of the
Oh, they eat
traditional,
their own. Yeah,
the
absolutely.
traditional leftists. Oh, I'm sorry, you're not left enough. You're not enough of an
Look at
ally.
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 20 years ago, she was a fairly radical feminist. Now she's a alt-right, extreme
Attorney.
right-wing nut because she won't go along with the trans agenda because she's enough of a feminist to say women are a particular class that can be defined, and in her view, trans women simply don't fall into that view. Well, that's enough to get her basically. Of course, she has at this point, fuck you.
She's
money.
got fuck you money. Yeah.
So she's not cancelable. But for anybody who's
Right.
not J.K. Rowling, it becomes a lot easier to cancel them. And look, the transgender thing is just one freaking aspect of this entire progressive deal, and you just have to accept it. And you have not just accept it or tolerate it, you have to celebrate it. And there's just a lot of people in this country that are not going to knuckle under to that.
I can't remember who said it or explained it. It wasn't Solzhenitsyn, but it was somebody who had survived communist Russia, basically remarking that the point isn't for you to be fooled. It's for you to be demoralized and to know that you have no control over the truth or anything else. I mean, which is essentially what Orwell wrote about in 1984. It was, they don't care that they're lying. They care that you're forced to deal with it and you can't speak against it.
Yeah,
They literally are trying to ground you down into dirt.
look, they know that they have no access to your inner life, so they know they can't tell you what to believe. But what they can do at the point of a gun is force you to publicly state that you do believe what they're saying, and that's good enough for them. I think George Orwell went a little too far when he ended 1984 by saying that basically Winston Smith now loved Big Brother. They don't really care that you love Big Brother. All they care about is that you are cowed enough to be forced to make whatever public declarations that they want you to make. And like I said, there are a lot of people who are now deciding, I am not going to make those declarations. And for now, this is all being held in the political arena. But as far as I can tell, we are...
I mean, not entirely.
No.
You see it in sports. You see it in music. You see it in movies.
No, but I mean the resistance to this is being done largely politically.
It's starting to come out, yeah.
At this moment. I'm not sure whether it'll stay that way. And I'm not sure, whether the progressives... Let's say that there's a political landslide in this country and we just say, okay, all of this progressive stuff, that's right out. We're just not going to do that. Maybe they'll just go back and say, well, we lost. Most people don't want it. We'll go away. Or maybe they won't. And
no, they'll never go back.
And if this keeps...
They'll retrench and find another angle.
And by the way, if they keep, winning politically, I don't think that, the people that, they call Magadonians or Trumpers or whatever, I don't think they're just going to sit idly by and say, well, we lost. There's nothing we can do.
No,
either.
That's what I mean. I don't think. First of all, once the crazy left came after children, that woke up a huge sleeping giant. And one that for some reason they were too stupid to realize might actually, I mean, because it doesn't matter if you're left or right or whatever. You don't go after people's kids. You just don't do it. It is like the single dumbest thing you can do.
Yes, well, as they remind us, they're not your kids. They're our
Right?
kids.
They're our kids. Fuck you. You pay for them.
Yeah, I've been saying this for years. The left could not be doing more to foment civil war in this country if they were trying.
And at this point, I kind of think they are trying.
And by the way, here's the thing. You talk about January 6th. January 6th is not the history didn't start on January 6th. It wasn't a whole bunch of people on January 6th who just said, hey, let's overthrow the U.S. government. It didn't come out of nowhere. That's the other thing that we've talked about this for years. Trump is not the problem. Trump is a symptom of the problem. The symptom is a political system that does not deliver results.
How many times
that
did
the electorate
the Republicans
wants.
tell us, oh, you don't like Obamacare? Okay, well then get us elected. Okay, we gave you the House. Oh, well, we can't do anything unless we have the Senate. Got you the Senate. Well, we really can't do anything unless we get the president. Okay, you got the presidency. Oh, yeah, we really can't do anything.
Yeah, it's been in practice for so long now. It'd be so disruptive, It's just, yeah, we have a political system that seems to deliver benefits for a very particular class of people in this country.
And an identifiable class.
And the middle class and the poor, they're not the recipients of this policy largesse.
Well, what's even worse is that the poor, the actual people who could use some help, they can sort of get it, but then they lose everything else. And they're kept beholden to that. Nearly every single policy, I don't care, left, right, whatever, that comes out of the federal government hurts the lower class. I fucking hate that term.
Yeah,
let's amongst us.
Yeah, let's call them lower income or middle income.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the more the less
we don't
income
have classes in this country the way that it's traditionally understood.
But it's amazing that no matter how earnest or honest, forthright these intentions and policies are, they end up hurting those who they supposedly are supposed to help more than anybody else.
And by the way, the progressive agenda has gone so deep into, for example, corporate culture, right? With environmental and social governance scores on investments. Okay, how's
that working out, Bud Light?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Half of the people in this country depend on stock returns to make their 401ks worth enough so they won't have to eat Alpo whenever they retire.
Those teacher unions?
Yeah, nearly 60%.
They're invested in lots and lots of stocks.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Nearly 60% of the American workforce via 401ks is invested in the stock market. Obviously, they're not calling up their broker and buying individual stocks. They're just part of...
No, they're invested in index funds and whatever else.
Vanguard or whoever. And it's Vanguard...
Blue chips.
And it's Vanguard who is forcing these companies to submit their ESG scores. So in effect, what Vanguard and BlackRock and all these other big companies are doing is they are using my money to fund their desired political objectives. And they're using my money and leveraging my stock returns, which I'm depending on for retirement, to force their particular environmental and social governance goals on publicly held company because they're institutional investors. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the market. But this is not their money. Look, I don't have any problem with anybody taking their money, their own money,
right,
and telling a company, I'm a shareholder, this is what I want you to do. Okay, fine. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. What I have a real problem with is this ESG investing being promulgated by Vanguard and BlackRock and other institutional investors with my money. Because now they're funding their political views
and being
with other
shoved down
people's
our
money.
throats.
And how do we fight that? Withdraw all of our 401k funds and starve them of money?
Yeah, put them where?
Yeah, and put them where? Because if I want to buy an index fund, I'm pretty much going to have to buy it through Vanguard or BlackRock or one of the other major institutional investors. I mean, I guess I could call a stockbroker but no, all of those index funds, those are run by the institutional investors. I would have to buy, S&P 500 stocks individually. I have a job. I have a life. I can't learn all about investing as well. That's what I'm supposed to be paying you for. And what you're supposed to be providing me with is returns. Not to be using my money to lower my returns because of your environmental and social goals. And then just go to the government policies like this whole thing. We want half of our cars to be all electric by 2035. Okay, how are we going to recharge them? We don't have the electricity to do it.
Right? Oh, and we're also going to kill all of the electricity.
Yeah, and by the way, what are we going to do with all of these solar panels? And all of the
How
other...
are you going to get the solar panels
and the batteries
if you don't have some sort of energy to get them?
Or you don't have the minerals to produce them.
Right? And how do you get those minerals?
This net zero climate thing is just another policy. It is completely unachievable. It is unattainable. None of these policy goals are physically possible. I mean, it's all nice to talk about making Johnny Polar Bear happy and keeping the poles from melting, but these goals are unachievable. They are literally unachievable. I was looking at a report out of the UK where they said even if it was out here, is in the House. Somebody was testifying in the House. It said, look, even if we did go with our net zero thing, and the Biden administration got us the half of all vehicles in the country being electrically powered. And even if we could recharge them all, which we can't because we don't have the electricity generating capacity to even recharge all of those cars. But even if we could do that, at the end of the century, our effect on CO2 would be 0.002, basically 2 1,000ths of a percent improvement in CO2.
In the best of conditions.
Yeah, in the best case. But these are the government policies. Either people are going to put up with this and they are just going to resign themselves to my life is always going to be worse. Everything is going to cost more. I'm not going to be able to buy the food that I want. I'm not going to be able to have the car that I want. I'm not going to be able to have transportation. I'm not going to be able to travel out of state to see my family, which I guess won't be a problem because nobody in my family will be allowed to move out of state. I guess people who have lived in the richest, most mobile society in the world, there is a chance that they will just say, okay, well, fine, you win. You get to have everything you want. Doesn't matter what we want. The progressives win. Or people are going to say no, and this great national divorce that we talked about is going to be a very messy one indeed.
I don't think a peaceable divorce is even possible at this point, unfortunately. And I say that with great trepidation because...
No, you have two sides who want to win.
And cannot agree on anything. And it's just...
Yeah, I mean,
there's no middle ground.
No.
Like there's literally no middle ground.
And look, we've had this discussion. I mean, I don't know how many times on this podcast.
I could probably count it. How many podcasts?
Yeah. We've talked about, and I remember, gosh, what was it, 10 or 15 years ago? when I wrote something whenever we were still blogging at Q&O, and I wrote something about how the country is going to divide. It's just going to split up. Our direction is with two polities who don't
this
even...
was the kangaroo, the kangaroo and the road coming.
Well, that was a financial thing. This was way even before that. I mean, we're not talking...
Maybe we used that.
Yeah, we're not talking 2009. We're talking 2005. And I just said straight up, this country is going to split apart. We have two ideologies in this country that are not only are not even compatible,
they don't
even speak the same language. Rights don't even mean the same thing for one party or the other. Neither one wants to be governed by the other.
We don't even have the same history.
Yeah,
we literally do not have the same history.
Yeah, they simply are not going to live together. This country is going to split apart. And I can remember Oliver Willis came out on his blog. I don't know if anybody remembers who Oliver Willis was, but he eventually went to Media Matters for America. And he came back and said what a bunch of BS it was. This country's not going to fall apart. This is just a bunch of neo-Confederate posturing. It's not neo-Confederate posturing. I'm not even saying I want it. I'm just saying this is what is going to happen. I'm just predicting it. This country is going to come unglued. And you can't have a country that has two completely different ideas about what the nature of government is. You know, as recently as 1960, 65, 68, we had a pretty good idea, a pretty common idea between Democrats and Republicans what the government's purpose was and what it was allowed to do. We no longer share.
There was a time when Democrats were actually anti-communist.
Yeah, as hard as that is to believe, yes, it was true. That's just not true anymore. The cultural Marxism has basically taken over the Democratic Party, and it's not going to be satisfied until everything traditional in this country is torn apart. And I just don't think that a lot of people outside of the Northeast and the West Coast are going to sign on with that agenda. And when you have major political figures who are already giving warnings that, most of us are NRA members, what you're essentially saying is we are willing to grab a rifle, head up into the hills, and start raising an army.
It's a little bit of a Molen Lebe. Yeah. I mean, not even a little bit. It's basically Molen Lebe.
Well, look, Molen Lebe is come and take it. This is we're going to bring it to you, preferably one bullet at a time. I mean, we're going from I'm going to defend myself on the right.
So you know how we were talking?
We're going to stop this.
I can't remember. It was a couple weeks ago, I think, and we were kind of remarking upon how it's not so much like a state by state thing as much as it's an urban versus rural thing. Yeah. Like you have these city states and their surroundings that operate one way, which is understandable. I mean, your urban needs are very different than suburban or rural needs. So you do need more government involvement in the city. Understood. But then when the cities can dominate the entire state, such as say, I don't know, New York City, Virginia, those things don't work.
And look, technically, and here's the thing, this is where it gets all messy. And this is one of the things that our framers tried to insulate us from. And in the 20th century, we decided there were a bunch of fools, and we decided to tear down that insulation, which was
17th Amendment you're going for here.
Yeah, which was look, and in the 1789 context. Look, we can't have a bunch of slave owners in Virginia telling the rest of us all what to do. Because, though most people don't realize it, in 1789, 20% of the population lived in Virginia. Mm-hmm. The whole point of the Constitution was to make sure that these Virginia slaveholders could not tell everybody else what to do. The whole idea was to say, look, democracy is great, and democracy is a fantastic way for figuring out what it is that people want. What it is not is a great way of running a government. because what you're going to end up with is, especially in a situation where 1 out of every 5 Americans lived in a single state. People talk today about, California has so many people. Yeah, 12% of the population, not 20. Believe me, the founding fathers were very well aware of what population differences between states looked like. Extremely well aware. And they built a system that ensured, look, if you live in this region of the country, you are not going to be able to have the ability to control the entire direction of the nation. Everybody else gets a say too. And if that means a diminution of your power in the government so that other people, even minorities, get their say in the government, then that's what we'll have to do.
Right. I mean, that was literally the point.
Right. And we've gotten rid of that now. And we have another problem today, because the other thing that we got rid of was states being able to run their state legislatures the way the national legislature is run. It is illegal, and has been illegal for many years, for a state to apportion its senators by anything other than equal population. So we can't have, a city that might have fewer senators than a huge portion of the rural area of the state. We can't have that balance. So what we basically have is a democratic system. So in a state like Illinois, where Chicago basically determines how the state runs, even in a huge state like California, largely Los Angeles and San Francisco, the 2 cities, which generally go in lockstep, they basically control all of the politics of the state. And
look at New York.
Technically that's democratic, by the way. I mean, technically,
that's right.
A majority of the people want the state government to do
just the majority of the people are all in one place.
Just the majority of people all happen to live in Illinois, it's Chicago.
Atlanta.
Or in Georgia, Atlanta. So sure, it's democratic, but the people who don't live in Atlanta really end up not having a voice in what is going on in their state because of, a pure democratic rule. I don't know how to fix that problem. I don't know how to make people...
Yeah, you do. Get rid of the 17th Amendment.
Yeah, well, that solves it at the state level or at the federal level. It doesn't solve it at the state level, because now states can't create their own.
You could have an electoral college type thing, state by state, because that is a problem. It's one that it's quite acute here in Virginia, because you basically have 2 big population centers. 2.5 between Northern Virginia, which is the biggest. Yeah, you've got the Norfolk area, which is where I'm pretty sure that's the biggest Navy command center in the United States. And then you've got Richmond, although that's sort of mixed. And then there's a lot of other people out there in Virginia. It's a fairly large state. It's not California by any means, but I mean it's not a small state. But that's who controls everything. Actually, up here in Northern Virginia, they control pretty much everything.
Well, see,
my vote doesn't even count.
See, and here's the thing about, this talk about this national divorce, which people are talking about more and more and more. And we're hearing talk about secession more and more and more. And there's this naive idea that we'll do this on a state by state basis, right?
Yeah, okay.
And that,
what about the debt?
But let's not even get to that. Let's just get to the process. So let's say California decides that they don't want to be part of the leftist part of, or the conservative part of the United States. So California says, well, California is going to break off. Well, hold on there, buddy. If you think...
What part of California?
Yeah, if you think that you're going to drag everybody with you, you may want to have another think coming. If we're going to decide to tear up the whole Constitution and the United States, you don't get to keep the same borders that you had under the United States. A lesson that...
What's this week, Kemosabe?
Yeah, a lesson that, by the way, Virginia learned in 1860.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
When
Sorry,
Virginia,
I got to fix my chair. I'm about to
yeah,
fall apart.
but when Virginia in 1860 said we're seceding from the Union, the western
Yeah.
half of the state said, "Yeah, what do you mean? What do you
Who's
mean?
this we?
Yeah, what do you mean we, Kemosabe? We're not going nowhere." And so there is a West Virginia today. There is a state today that exists because they would not secede from the Union when the rest of Virginia said they would go. So I think this, we talk about the split in terms of states. That is not the split that we're looking for.
I
And
think
that's not
that's
the
right.
split
You're
that
looking at
is
city
going to happen.
states and the rest of the country.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's just going to be messy. And the best we can hope, I think, at this point, is that it's not going to be violent. Because this is not
I don't even know if we can hope for that anymore. That's my worry. That's what I'm most fearful of. Is I think it's inevitable at this point
people on
that
both
it's going
sides
to be violent.
people on both sides are threatening violence. There are both your conservative and progressive groups who are going out on the internet and saying, here are our guns. There's a civil war is coming. We are going to have to defeat these people. These people are evil. And this is, by the way, both sides. These people are evil.
And that's the problem is there's this, like we started out saying at the beginning of the podcast, it's not a question of whether or not we can find some common terms. We're just so freaking separate. There's nothing compatible, and
we're so incompatible.
So poisoned.
We're so incompatible that we're willing to shoot each other over it. That's the sense that I am getting. And so I think this is a terrifying time to be living in, quite frankly, because this isn't 1860. If we decide that we're going to have another civil war, even a spontaneous one, in 1860, 90-some% of the population lived on their own farms and produced their own food. So a civil war wasn't that big of a deal. If you lived somewhere in, Indiana and there was a civil war, well, you were still going to go out and you were going to plow your fields and you were still going to harvest and you were still going to do canning so that you'd have food over the winter. It didn't really affect you. In a civilization like ours, where 97% of the people live in, don't work in farming anymore, only 3% of the population works in farming, more than half of the population now lives in cities. Any sort of violence like this, any sort of civil war, any sort of civil conflict, and I don't think it would be a formal civil war. I think it would, like a force-on-force conflict, like 1860 to 1865, where there were literally two governments and two uniformed armies fighting, peer conflict.
I mean, essentially two countries, yeah.
Yeah, it was really two countries. We can argue about whether the Confederate States of America was ever a legitimate country, but they had all of the trappings of a legitimate country. And for those 4 years, they operated as if they were a country, and certainly they thought they were. In fact, some of them still think they are now. This is going to be more like Serbia, Yugoslavia.
I think that's a best case scenario. I mean, honestly.
And those kind of civil wars, which are basically just local militias going off on whoever their enemies are, those get very dirty. They get very bloody. They get very brutal. And it's looking like we are headed towards the Jugoslavian situation, not the 1860 situation. And it terrifies me because if that happens, think of it. Our supply chains collapse. There's no food delivered. I mean, there will be millions of people who will simply die for lack of food and water. Even if the violence is, relatively contained, because we have such a delicately balanced system that any sort of major shock to it puts hundreds of millions of people at risk. And it would be far better for everybody if we could decide, I don't know, maybe a rewrite of the Constitution to just have 50 independent states that just happen to share a defense policy or something like that. There's got to be
A
some way.
reversion to the Confederation of States or something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be some way out of this other than the direction that we're heading, because everything that I see has
Well,
us
think about
heading
it this way
towards
too,
a
Dale.
Serbian-style
Here's
civil
the
war.
thing that is really scary. If the United States goes to war with each other, as this happened in every other civil war, who's going to be there to help out whom? Now you're going to have other states involved. And you're talking about a full-on world war at this point, because there's no doubt that China, Russia would intervene to try to protect their interests. Canada, UK, parts of Europe would intervene. There would be, it would be the worst case scenario of the United States. So let's think about it in terms of risk. Remember the game Risk?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, all of the armies are piled up in America.
Yeah, but look, you say that, but neither China nor Russia has enough sea or airlift capability to
That's
invade.
I'm not talking about I'm talking about resources. And here's the thing.
Oh, but yeah, we would be completely cut off for any resources from China. We would be
exactly,
not that we have a lot of resources from Russia, but we'd be cut off from them as well.
Well, China would cut us off also from, say, the Congo, where we get like stuff for like lithium ion. What is it? Lithium, whatever battery, nickel batteries. No, not lithium, nickel, whatever it is.
Let's just say rare earth metals and just move on.
There you go, rare earth metals. We would be cut off from shipping. We would be cut off from oil. There would not be the ability to produce oil because we cannot get those, lines would be shut down. There wouldn't be any way to like transport them. I mean, it would be an absolute disaster.
But look, it would be
it is something that China and Russia would love.
Yeah, they'd love it, but they wouldn't get off scot-free either. I mean, there would be serious negative repercussions on them because the entire global trading system would shut down largely, because there would be nobody left. If we don't have the United States Navy,
they'd be happy with that. Yeah, I really do think they'd be happy with that.
Well, we certainly
I agree with you 100% that it's a stupid, cutting off your nose to spite your face kind of thing. But I think they'd be happy with that. To eliminate America from being the world leader in all this stuff.
Oh, and by the way,
never been able to overcome.
It would be the perfect opportunity for China and or Russia simply to launch EMP attacks to take out the electric grid.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be no way to recover from it because
probably no one would retaliate.
How? Who would retaliate?
Yeah, I mean, this is just
Canada.
And so, I fear that this Trump indictment, in and of itself, because people are so now firmly entrenched in their positions. I fear that this Trump indictment is, I think, as you put it, a crossing of the Rubicon.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. We there's no turning back now.
And I can't.
We have lost the ability to turn back.
And I can't think of a worse person to be the one to whom we have to put this crossing of the Rubicon than Donald Trump. And yet
I'd rather have Julius Caesar.
Yeah, I'm really losing all of my confidence and all of my faith in the future. I just don't see how this turns around.
And that's the thing, is it's become, because it's so much deeper than the politics of today. I mean, like you said before, I mean, we've been talking about this for a really, really long time. We've been watching the crumbling of civilization. And not just us. I mean, lots of people have and have remarked upon it. And everybody's like, oh, no, 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 it's not that bad. No, we have undermined and chipped away at the pillars of Western civilization to the point where it's about to collapse. I mean, I don't, I I understand that sounds dramatic, but I don't know that there's another way to explain it other than that.
The problem is that there is an enormous amount of stored capital. And you can
We've been
undermine
exhausting it.
and you can undermine the foundations of your civilization for a long time, and there will be, ill effects here and there, and people will notice things aren't as great as they used to be. But you can largely gloss over it. Most people can live their regular lives. And everything works right up until the point that it doesn't. And then it completely collapses. I mean, I'm sure that there were a lot of people who showed up in Sarajevo in 1988 thinking, wow, the Olympics are great. The Yugoslavians have this all figured out. Like these people are all nice
Boy,
and
those
friendly.
ski slopes were awesome.
Yeah, this is really great. I mean, how many of those people realized that in 4 years, the Olympic village would be destroyed by artillery fire? When this stuff goes south, it goes south really quickly. And every sign I see is that this stuff is going south, that people are getting angrier and angrier. And this Donald Trump thing, look, this is just like lighting a match. And most of the time when you light a match,
Yes.
it's no big deal. You light a match, you hold it, maybe it gives out a little light, maybe it gives out a little heat. Worst that can happen, oh, it's starting to get hot, I'll shake it out. But whenever you have built up over the last 50 years 40 or 50 tons of black powder, and then you light a match in the middle of all that black powder, the match is not the problem. The problem is the 50 tons of black powder you're standing on that you've been gathering for the last 50 years.
Why should it have mattered that Franz Ferdinand was assassinated? It shouldn't have made any difference at all, except, like you just said, there was a lot of tinder and black powder built upon, undergirding that scenario. And it's even worse here because this is the most important nation in the world, in all of history, quite frankly. Roman Empire fell. That was bad. But the world survived.
But again, it was only the western part of the Roman Empire that fell. And
The Eastern Empire, didn't fall till 1400.
Yeah, there was a
whatever,
successor state that lasted for several hundred years. And look, the Western Empire had not been the center of Rome for a couple of hundred years. It was
That's
basically
absolutely true.
it
Correct.
had switched from the heart of empire to a frontier.
Not my point, Dale.
But again, I have a point. Let me get to it.
All right, go.
Even at that, the collapse of the Western Roman Empire threw Western Europe into basically 8 centuries of, well, we call it the Dark Ages for a reason. I mean, it was 8 centuries where all of the technological progress that had been made in Rome was just lost. We forgot. Yeah, we read Caesar building a bridge across.
Look at the art.
The Rhine.
Look at what happened to the art. We had these beautiful, correct, like anatomically precise busts and statues and paintings. The Sistine Chapel. After the fall of Rome was part of it, the Muslim invasion was what finished it off. killed off Mediterranean trade. Everybody retreated to there, and then all of a sudden, everything's stick figures and tapestries.
Yeah,
Like,
everything. Yeah, basically society in Western
it
Europe
inverted
anyway.
on itself. It
Yeah,
just completely inverted on itself.
and that's what I'm afraid is happening here. I don't know how to get out of it. Nobody wants to believe it. We're probably one of the few people who are willing to just have this sort of negative view of the future. But I see nothing that tells me that we are not heading straight for a Yugoslavia-style disaster. That tells me that we aren't heading for a Yugoslavia-style disaster.
I Again, I think that's a best case scenario because we are much bigger than Rome ever was,
And have far more influence in the world, far more. Um, Anything that we do has a far greater effect on the world. I mean, just in terms of currency, basically everything in the
right?
world in international trade, despite what the BRICS are trying to do, they don't have the currencies to be able to support a world reserve currency. Only the United States does. Even the Europeans couldn't do it. If we go through a Yugoslavia-style breakup, then the U.S. currency is going to be worth nothing. That's going to be such a shock to global trade. I guess we'll have to just go back to gold.
That would be what most people would do, I would think. Yeah.
So
But it would also be, I mean, it would not just collapse our country, it would collapse a lot of countries. And that's going to include international shipping, travel, banking. I mean, like espionage. Like it would be the equivalent of well, I mean the meteor that created the Gulf of Mexico.
yeah, the Chicxulub meteor that killed all the
Right? I
dinosaurs.
mean, it would just overnight it would basically end financial transactions as we know them now. I mean, there would be. I'm not saying they'd all be gone, but it would change everything. There'd be a huge scramble. People would not know what to do. I mean, energy would be gone. I mean, it would just collapse society as we know it.
Yeah, all of Western civilization. And look, no one wants more than me to be, known as Chicken Little, crying the sky is falling with the sky never falling. I would be perfectly happy to be the butt of everybody's jokes and said, this guy thought civilization was collapsing. I just don't think that I'm going to be that guy.
I'd love to be Paul Ehrlich.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to be Paul Ehrlich. I don't even think that's anywhere near a best case scenario now. So, I don't know what to say other than I think that this is...
This may be the most pessimistic we've ever ended a podcast.
Yeah, maybe.
We're literally talking about the end of the world.
Yeah, pretty much. And I wish I saw a way out of it. All I can hope is...
I wish I did too.
All I can hope is that this thing just carries on creaking into the future for just long enough for me to shuffle off of this mortal coil when it's not going to be my problem anymore. Because I got to tell you, if this happens and I'm like 70 years old, that's not the retirement I was looking for. And that's...
Bitch, I got kids.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, Michael, always great talking to you. We'll look forward to talking to you again next week.
All right, bud. Talk to you later.
So long. All right, well, that's the podcast for today. It's a pretty much of a dark downer of a podcast. I don't have any wise or upbeat parting words. Try to have a great week this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Hopefully we'll all still be here. Until then, have a great week. So long.